Welcome to Scoop and Scale, where we dish up the science and weigh facts about mostly equine nutrition. I'm Michelle Anderson. I spent 2 decades working in equine media, and I currently create content and help veterinarians and businesses connect with horse owners through my consulting business, Cadence Marketing and Media. I'm a trail rider, dressage rider, and an at-home horse keeper.
And I'm equine nutrition consultant, Dr. Clair of Clarity Equine Nutrition. I develop diet plans for horses ranging from metabolic seniors to Olympic athletes. I also consult for equine nutrition companies. I'm a scientist, dressage rider, and a pony club mom.
Clair and I collaborated for years when I was the editor of an equine publication, and she was one of our regular contributors. We'd finish work, but we always had more to talk about. New products, new research, and our own horses. This podcast is an extension of those conversations. It's for anyone who wants to make better choices when it comes to feeding and caring for their own horses.
And before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The information in this podcast is general and not meant to replace the individualized advice of your own qualified equine nutritionist or veterinarian. While I have a PhD in nutrition, I'm not a veterinarian and can't give medical advice.
With that, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the following episode. Hi, and thank you for joining us as we take a deeper dive into understanding horse supplements. In episode 7, Clair and I covered the basics, which was challenging because horse supplements get complicated quickly. So Clair, how many years of chemistry did you take in school to become a nutritionist?
More than I care to remember. I didn't really like chemistry. Do you know I got an E in high school for chemistry?
I don't know what an E is.
I know, it's not even on the thing here in the United States. But I did redeem myself because I got an A my freshman year of college and stayed there thereafter. But yeah, me and chemistry in high school, not a good thing. But then somebody let me know that you actually had to understand chemistry to be a nutritionist. And I was like, oh, I better actually pay attention here. So I've done quite a lot of chemistry.
Yeah. So I was going to say that I think that you are probably way better at chemistry than I am as a journalism major. But I did get a decent grade in high school chemistry. But I did not go on in college to take chem. So you have a lot more chemistry than I do and a lot more than most horse owners. And that's good because fortunately, when horse owners need help, we can turn to smart people like Clair and today's guest, Dr. Lydia Gray.
Lydia, we're so glad you made it on time to join us. And I'm super excited to have you here. It was super fun to meet you back in May and June. I felt like we were stalking each other at the end of May, beginning of June. We kept showing up in the same places.
All I remember was we did a lot of eating. We found a reserve table, and that was the National Animal Supplement Council meeting, one of them, and then the Equine Science Society, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were both great meetings.
I was going to jump in the earlier conversation you were having and let you both know that I got A's in journalism and chemistry in college.
So that's why you're here today.
So with that, I'm going to give a quick introduction to Dr. Lydia Gray, which is hard because she has done so much. She spent 16 years at SmartPak, where she served as staff veterinarian and medical and research director. She has also worked in equine welfare and rescue. She's now an independent consultant and helps equine-related organizations with things like strategic planning, product labeling, research and development. Plus, she does writing from the journalism degree and speaking engagements. She also judges and competes in dressage and combined driving, which I cannot believe she can find time to harness a horse. So all of that's to say she's very busy, and we're glad to have her. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our questions about supplements. So Lydia, starting out, how do people at companies decide which supplements or ingredients to bring to market for horse owners?
Well, I think it begins with going to meetings like Dr. Chins was talking about, the National Animal Supplement Council. There's lots of ideas presented there about new products, new trends, ingredients. There's lots of new companies that are part of the trade show there. The Equine Science Society, this was the first year that I had been, and I just could kick myself for not going for the last, 20, 30 years. It was phenomenal and fascinating, and took pages and pages of notes. So certainly meetings is one place. I have Google Scholar Alert set up for equine and horse research. So I get every day a download of maybe 10 new papers that have come out. There's a couple websites, both layperson websites and academic places that have new research coming. So that's one place to get ideas. It involves market analysis, though, doing competitive analysis, which is seeing what other people are doing, what they're charging, how they're positioning products. So the word we use is ideation. That means brainstorming, really coming up with ideas. You can do it from a couple of directions. You can say, okay, here's what's out there coming down the pipeline as far as ingredients, maybe from the human world. Or you can say, you know what, horses have this problem. Let's say their hair is all turning green. I'm just making up something silly. Let's, as a company, we have the manpower, the brain power, and the resources. Let's figure out the solution to that problem and then make a product around it and position it for the people whose horses' hair is turning green. So you can come at it from two different ways, the end or the beginning.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about the human influence. I always wonder about that because something will pop up in human medicine or human supplementation, and then we'll see something similar, like resveratrol comes to mind. Like it showed up in horse supplements, and then I saw it at Costco for humans, and that you guys can explain it better than I can, but it's, in red wine, but you can't necessarily drink a whole bottle of wine or give that to your horse to have the metabolic and joint benefits of that. That's not uncommon to have that back and forth between the species.
Yeah. And what I keep in mind is that you can get the idea from what's going on in humans. Like I listened to a 2-day talk not too long ago. It was from NIH, their Office of Dietary Supplements, just to find out what was new and improved coming down the pipeline in the human world. But then you're like, okay, the species are different. And as a veterinarian, I respect that cats are different from dogs, their physiology, and dogs are different than cattle, and everything is different. There are some subtle differences that you have to know about. And just because it works in humans doesn't always mean it works in horses. So it's nice if there is existing research in your species of interest to show that the product is both safe and effective. By the way, 2 words that are not supposed to be used with supplements because supplements are not drugs. But behind the scenes, we'll talk about safe and effective. You should never see those words on a label unless the company wants the FDA to say, knock, 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 how's it going in there? Gonna talk to you about your labels. Got a minute? Yeah.
Yeah, so that brings up a really good point about who's regulating horse supplements and supplement marketing, right? And I think I see it all the time. And I know when I'm looking at, for me, it's a huge turnoff when I see people putting things on labels, like you said, saying things are safe, saying that they treat ulcers or whatever, because maybe you could elaborate more on like what you can and can't say on those sorts of things and who is doing the oversight.
Yeah. So I actually found my pages and pages of notes from the NASC meeting that we both went to this spring, because the National Animal Supplement Council is an association of supplement manufacturers and retailers and suppliers of ingredients. It's all the people involved in bringing those products to market in all the species, whether you're a horse, dog, cat, and I guess exotic, not food animals. That's a double different ball of wax. But attending that training is mandatory if you're an NASC member that's audited. And audited means I'm going to actually go to their website. Well, let's see if I can do it from memory. In order to be an audited member that can apply the NASC quality seal to products, you have to have the audit of your facility. You have to show them your good manufacturing practices or GMPs, and that you have a quality control manual, that there are SOPs to making products. So no making products in your garage just freeform. That's not acceptable.
Does that mean it doesn't happen?
No, but we're going to tell you how to reduce the risk that you inadvertently buy a product that is made in somebody's garage. We're going to show you what to look for on the label. But so yeah, you have to have SOPs. You have to show them. And these things, these guidelines come from the FDA. So that's ultimately who's regulating part of the supplement industry. What's challenging is that there are health supplements, what we used to call dosage form animal health supplements, DFAHPs, dosage form animal health products. And then there's feed supplements. The FDA, their lane is the health supplements, the non-nutrition, the non-feeds. When we were working on supplements, we'd say feeds and non-feeds, so we knew what we were talking about. The feeds are different. That's nutrition. They contain nutrients that sustain life. things like vitamins and minerals and protein. They're not regulated by AAFCO, which is the Association of American Feed Control Officials. They come from a state. There are state regulators. FDA, F stands for federal, so that's national. They set the guidelines for it. And then that's the association, AAFCO. It's the state regulators that regulate feed supplements. Feed supplements, just as an example, are your hoof supplements, any treats, electrolytes would fall in there. Any supplement that contains a nutrient that's intended use is for nutrition. Amino acid supplement, muscle building supplement. And the way you really know about if it is a feed or a non-feed is the label, because feed supplements have the same label template as a feed, which like a 50-pound bag of feed, of grain. So it's got your guaranteed analysis, which we shorten to GA, and you'll see like crude protein percent and crude fat and crude fiber. And then you'll see nutrients listed, and it might be percent. And the templates, AAFCO tells you how to do this. Some of them are in parts per million, and some of them are in like milligrams. It's all different, and it's all based on how much of the ingredient there is in that product. I mean, parts per million, little bitty tiny. So you wouldn't want to have that unit be a percent because it would be so weirdly written and small. But I have a point here, and I think it's that your question was about who regulates. It depends on which supplement you have. A feed is regulated by state feed control officials as you enter the state. And if it's a non-feed or a health supplement or a DFAHP, it's FDA. That was a long answer to your short question, but I did provide a summary at the end.
Like a good 4-H'er. That's how you do your oral reasons in 4-H. Now, I want to see if I am following this for myself and for the other horse owners. So for nutrition feed supplements, we're talking about nutrients that the horses need, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals.
Fiber.
Okay. So then on the other side, we would be talking about like things that might be in joint supplements, like maybe ones that have glucosamine or chondroitin or the resveratrol. So if it's something like omega-3 fatty acids that are both a feed nutrition ingredient and also beneficial for like joint health, potentially, I can see both of you. Our audience can't see both of you, but you're all smiling and nodding along. So I feel like I'm on the right track here. Where do those fall?
And that's where it gets really complicated, and it makes my head hurt. Again, you made the point. People can't see us, but we can see each other. And Michelle is sitting in the middle on our screen, and I'm on one side, and Lydia's on the other. And I feel like we have Lydia representing health supplements on one side, and me representing feed supplements on the other, and then Michelle, the consumer, in the middle. And right now, Michelle almost has her head in her hands. Yeah, it is confusing. It's confusing for me because I look at things. So, for example, I think about zinc. And one of the reasons why there is a nutritional requirement for zinc is that zinc is vitally important for immune function and hoof health and all these things that are health related, but it's a food regulated ingredient. And so it's a lot of it comes down to how you as a company then position that product and what you say about it.
Exactly. In the industry, it's called intended use. And I know people can't see this, but just for you guys, there is a flow chart of if this is the product I want to make, what the heck is it? Is it a feed or is it a non-feed? And that's part of developing a supplement and bringing it to market. Because if I want to have a product with omega-3 fatty acids in it, but not as a nutrient, I want to have them in for the way they support proper inflammation. Notice how I said that?
You didn't say anti-inflammatory.
No, that is a no word. That'll bring the FDA to your door faster than Wile E. Coyote. But it's intended use. So if I want to make a product with omega-3 fatty acids in it for something else, then it has become, because of the use I intend it for, it has become a non-feed or a health supplement. And what we notice is claims must always be true and factual. You have a little more leeway with claims if it's a non-feed or a health supplement than you do with AAFCO, because it is a nutrient. I mean, nutrients are well defined. Amino acids build muscle. Vitamins, zinc, they have very specific functions, and they're defined in the AAFCO official publication, or OP, as we say in the industry. So you got to be really careful that you are aligned with those definitions and the proper use. You can't stray. But when you're making a health there, she's got it. Oh, is it brown this year? That's a gross color. Poop color.
It is kind of a goldish. Yeah, it's pretty yucky color, actually.
Oh, okay. But if you're making a health supplement, you have a little bit more freedom with your claims. But I went to the training, remember I said, and I wrote down words to use: promote, support, maintain, because it's all about maintaining normal and healthy. Supplements aren't drugs. They don't treat, mitigate, cure, prevent, none of those words. Claire, I think you said there's claims out there that supplements prevent or treat ulcers.
Right. And you can't, and you absolutely shouldn't be using the name of a condition really on a product either, right, Lydia?
Nope.
So you shouldn't even say ulcers, especially in the name of the product. That's a big no-no.
No, that's a no-no. So right there is a host of things that we've helped you with already, 15 minutes in, with things to look for in a label. So if there's a label that's got the disease or a condition name in the name of the product, that's a no-no. And if it talks on the label, in the industry, when we say label, we don't just mean the paper label that goes around the jar or bucket or bag or whatever. Label to the regulators means anything in copy that supports that product. So it means the website. It means any flyers you have about it. It means trade show signage. It's anything that you wrote.
It means testimonials that people have made on your behalf online. And you then say, oh, I'm so glad that worked for you that way.
That is a do not cross, what is it, monopoly, do not collect.
Yeah, exactly. Do not pass go.
Yeah, do not pass go. That's it. I've got a note here that specifically says from this year's training, never ever, in all caps, like a review. Because the minute you interact with a review or testimonial, you, the company, are responsible for it. So there's no editing of reviews. If you edit a review, that's you speaking now. And the FDA, there they are again. Ding-dong.
Oh, there's a bunch of social media marketers maybe listening that may have gotten a little nervous.
It is tricky and it's really hard, and there's a fine line. I know that you need to get your message out there of what your product does. And I went to NASC, I went with promote, support, maintain. I really wanted to come home with 5 words, just 2 more extra words that could be used easily. And I was really disappointed that I just came home with the same 3 I went with, which was, promote, support, maintain. That's why when people are looking at things like labels can get a little monotonous. Promotes this, supports this, maintains this, maintains this.
I can help you, Claire. I have 3 columns here. One is words to use that promote, support, maintain. One is words not to use: treat, prevent, cure, mitigate, chronic, pain, dose. Those are all drug words. Diagnose. Words to use with caution. And when it says with caution, the context matters. And also, if you can put a qualifier or a modifier with it, then you can pass, we call the red face test. So if a regulator comes a calling, you can explain why you chose those words. So the words to use with caution are relieve, aid, enhance, improve, boost. Ooh, they have reduce on here. I'm just going to cross that out. I don't think reduce is a safe word.
No, because it's not quantifiable. The thing that just a word to our listeners about how they use this in context of looking at products, knowing this knowledge helps me. I mean, I come across new products all the time, as I'm sure you do, Lydia, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, is this going to be a new thing in my toolkit, or am I going to go, and keep walking? And one of the things that makes me go, keep walking is when companies don't know how to play in the space well, and I can give people a little bit of leeway because when I write marketing stuff, and I get it, it's hard and we all push boundaries a little bit and maybe make mistakes every now and again. But when people just flat out haven't educated themselves on what the regulatory requirements are and what they can and what they can't say and how the label should be laid out for the kind of product they're selling and that kind of thing, that's a red flag for me. And I just keep walking. And I know I'm probably walking away from some pretty good products at times, but I just can't do that.
To me, if they haven't taken the time to learn about the industry and where their lane is, to me, it reflects maybe they're doing the same thing with their ingredients. Maybe they didn't take the time to learn that this is a better form of the ingredient, because you can buy, let's say, zinc a bunch of different ways. Are they buying high quality zinc? So I look at it as perhaps their production. They didn't also read the rules on manufacturing. I mean,
So how, as a horse owner, because I am fairly confident that I could go to my regular feed store right now and pick up a product off the shelf that is not labeled quite right or might be pushing things. And I can definitely get online and order something that doesn't meet all of the rules and regulations. How can I, as a horse owner, know a company is legit and that the product is going to be safe for my horse? Because I think we get really concerned about medications and vaccines and different things that are highly regulated that we're getting from our veterinarians. But I think there's sometimes less caution about what we're ordering online maybe and putting in our horse's feed bucket. So how can we know that it's going to be safe for our horses? And Dr. Gray, I give that over to you, and then I'm sure Claire will have some thoughts too.
one way to start is when you are looking at a product, whether it's online or in the feed store, tech store, is look for that NASC quality seal. And even some of the manufacturers have it wrong. This products don't get approved. People will say, oh, my product is approved by the NASC. Look, that's the seal. Exactly. Your company has done all the right things. They've been audited, so their manufacturing processes, practices have been scrutinized and they've met all the criteria. Their labels are good. They don't have the, egregious claims. Their facility itself has been audited. Then this is really important. When they get not complaints about the product, not quality complaints, like it was a different color this time, more like I gave this to my horse and his leg fell off. If you have a side effect, an adverse event, the NASC has a specific portal, password protected. The FDA has immediate access that you put those in. So that is called NAERS, NAERS, NAERS. It's a better system. It's more flexible and nimble and quicker. It has the right data and it's more accurate. It has all the data. It's better than like what the FDA has for drugs. So the fact that you're a member and you're putting all of your side effects that you hear about from customers into this big database. And if there's anything that happens in the world, like a recall, melamine, the NASC can go and type melamine in and all the melamine complaints will come up when that happened in dog food. It's amazing. So when CBD became a big trend and like it was blowing up, that's one thing that I at the time asked them, just throw it in and see what pops up. And it's a way that I knew it was, I'm not thinking of a better word than safe, but I tend to use safe use rather than safe use in horses. So having that NASC seal is one thing, but the other is there's plenty of good companies that don't belong to NASC and therefore don't have the seal. But you know what they all have in common is they've been around a long time and they have a reputation to protect. So if you recognize the company and their name and their credibility, I tend to not buy supplements from people that I haven't heard of, especially if they're not NASC members. Does that make sense? Because they could be fly-by-nights, just out for a quick buck. That is not the pathway to safe or effective. Do you want to add to that, Claire?
No, and I think the NAERS system is really powerful. And going back to an earlier question Michelle had about how do companies formulate products, anybody who is a member of NASC, any company that has access to that NAERS database, it's a great way when you're formulating a product to say, I think I'd like to put this in it. Let's just say, oh, heck no, it's getting a ton of side effects. Okay, never mind. We're not going to put that in our product, right? So it's a great resource. And as Dr. Gray said, we don't have anything that powerful on the human side for human supplements. I mean, we're light years ahead as far as kind of oversight of pet and equine supplements, thanks to NASC. And again, it's not without risks, sort of the fly-by-night or the short-lived companies that don't yet have a name yet. I mean, I can think of a very well-known event rider, not in this country, but who lost a major title. And when it was investigated, it came down to a supplement that he had been giving that ultimately was being mixed in a less than stellar environment. And I think the company had approached him as a sponsorship type deal, because that happens, right? You get a good rider on your books and everybody wants to feed it kind of thing. And yeah, it went south for them big time.
And I can also think of like the well-meaning horse owner who has faced a problem or a challenge with their horse and they have come up with some formulation that they think will work and might be sold at the farmer's market. Is there any regulation of that kind of product?
The FDA and state regulators, they do go to in person. There are people, and many of them have horses or dogs or cats. And so they see ads on Facebook and they go to your farm stores and your tack shops and your feed stores, and they see things. Part of their job is going and looking at products that are sitting on shelves. Farmers markets, I don't know about. I guess I would be hesitant to buy something at a farmer's market. That seems very just mom and pop-ish to me.
And I think some products do start that way and end up gaining pretty massive traction. I mean, some of them end up becoming quite legitimate and others don't. But it sounds too good to be true. It probably is as well.
I would hope that if they do become big, that eventually they join an ASC and they start manufacturing with good manufacturing practices and they start following SOPs and put their data in the areas. And yeah.
And I've certainly rained on several people's parades, which is all I hate doing, but they'll phone me.
Well, I love doing it.
They'll phone me and they want to bring a treat to market, or they've got something, to your point, Michelle, that they've cobbled together that they've been feeding their horse. And when I talk to them about, okay, well, that's great. And here's what we're going to have to do to make this a thing that you can sell. There's silence on the end of the phone, and very few of them actually want to go through, just don't have the time power or the manpower or the backing to actually take that all the way. But there's a product that I've helped that did start off where somebody started making it for their horse, but they also happened to be a PhD nutritionist. So they had a little bit of a different background than most. And
is it you, Claire? Is it you?
No, I've never actually made anything for myself.
So earlier, Dr. Gray, you mentioned that you have a Google Scholar set up and you get alerts every day. What kind of claims can products or manufacturers make about research, or their products having research or ingredients having research behind them? And then how can the horse owner verify that research or contextualize it in a way that's meaningful for their own horse?
Well, this is where I often rain on parades in the research arena, because soapbox, how long do you have? Everybody wants research. They want an ingredient or a formula to be proven safe and effective. The problem is one study does not prove safety or efficacy. The FDA will not accept one study as proof of anything. And again, supplements are not drugs. To be a drug, you have to go down a very long and very expensive pathway that involves many studies. Then you earn the right to pair research with the product and say, proven. Proven is not a word that should ever be used with a supplement and research. Just because you have a study that shows significance statistically, you still can't say proven with a supplement. Does that make sense? Your eyes are huge. Okay. This is where I rain on parades, because clients will come to me and say, we had this amazing product we always knew was amazing, but then we did this research and proved it was amazing. So I wanted to design a landing page and a website that has the study. And I'm like, well, first of all, we're going to take away proof on everything. That word should not be in the vocabulary of a supplement manufacturer. It's just what supplement manufacturers do. It doesn't meet the FDA's standard of the right to say proof. So on the one hand, then that discourages supplement manufacturers from doing research, because you can do a research study, but they don't even want it linked to the product. I don't even want to get into the 2-click rule, because, it makes my head hurt and my ears bleed. But you're not supposed to, on a website, put your product on the same page as your research. You're supposed to separate them. Now, the FDA has granted some leniency. They say, okay, veterinarians have had some specific training in chemistry, maybe journalism, whatever. And we believe they can read research better than the average layperson. And so you can talk about a product and the research study that accompanies it at the same time with vets, because we think they have the wherewithal to understand what the research study says, and then they can still make a decision.
So does that mean you can put that in your marketing materials that you're giving to the vet, or that you can have a conversation with the vet? Both of those things?
Both. Yeah. So at a trade show, you could talk to a vet, and you'll often have at your booth the product and then a rack of research, published or non-published, both, and say, look what we did. And so this goes together. It could be a mailing. It could be a password protected portion of your website that wouldn't be available to the average user, But if you're a DVM and you shared your credentials and you've got a password protected vet only section, then you can put products and research on the same page. I think people don't realize that, they're all like, oh, supplements are unregulated. No, when you're in their industry and you're making supplements, I mean, it's a bear to negotiate all of the rules and regs and not set your company up to be risky.
I have experience on the publishing side working with both supplement companies and pharmaceutical companies. And the pharmaceutical companies, especially, there's always lawyers who review things. And so is that as true of the supplement companies, that there are lawyers reviewing things to make sure that they are meeting their guidelines?
It depends on the size of the company. I was wanting to say it depends on the size of the company several times because, like, if you talk about how long it takes to bring a supplement to market or how many supplements you bring to market in 1 year or any of those things, smaller companies have less people and less resources and less money. It takes them longer or less time, depending on what steps they decide we're okay with the risk of skipping this step. Sometimes bigger companies have more stage gates or review and approval steps. And smaller companies, like the owner makes all the decisions, so goes along faster. But a smaller company might not have legal review, or they might outsource legal review, where a larger company might have an in-house attorney. Every company does it different. So I don't want to speak for all companies. So some utilize an attorney to review things and some don't. Kind of depends on your understanding of the supplement industry and where things belong and intended use and claims and things. There are attorneys, like the NASC uses an attorney who his lane is so narrow. It is just animal supplements. But man, does he know his stuff.
Oh, he does. And I've had clients use him and review things. And like all things in life, when they get reviewed by attorneys, you can make the decision to say, okay, now my eyes are open. I understand the risk and I'm okay with that risk. And I'm going to leave the text the same as it is. And I've had clients before where sent their labels to their legal team for review and they stripped out all the promote, maintain, whatever. And I'm arguing going, no, you can legally say that. You're allowed to say that. And they were so conservative and so risk averse that I was like, you're never going to sell this because your competition is saying things legally that they're allowed to, and you're saying nothing.
It depends on that. I was going to say the voice of your company, the company's core values and philosophy and their risk aversion. Like some companies, we talk about in NSC that, the speed limit is 55 miles per hour, like on a country highway road. But many companies go a little bit over that, like 62 is fine. And maybe 68 is fine. 120, it's going to get you pulled over. Some companies are okay with that. You see them out there saying proven safe and effective. That's speeding at 120 miles an hour. But something like safe use in horses has been studied. We call it softer. That's a softer way of saying it.
When you're a horse owner and you're scooping a little thing of powder and putting it into your feed bucket, all of these things are things that I don't think we consider at all. It's if maybe our vets recommended it or our trainers recommended it, a friend has used it, we got a targeted ad online for it. We don't necessarily know that all of this is happening behind the curtains. So
I think that's good. I think vet recommended is good. I think knowing people that have actually used it versus just reading reviews online, because these days you don't know who wrote the review. If they even used the product, maybe it was AI generated.
So if you have research on the end product, right? So let's say I have a supplement, it's got 5 things in it. Ideally, in a beautiful, perfect world, I've done research on that finished product as it's in the bucket going to consumers. But as we know, that's expensive and, as you said, doesn't often allow the company to make very much more in the way of things they can say about it than if they didn't do the research. So of those 5 ingredients, though, maybe a couple of them have been researched themselves, the ingredients independently, which doesn't necessarily mean to say they're going to act the same way in the final bucket of your finished sauce, because maybe there's an interaction between 2 of the ingredients that make it not behave the same way. But let's say there is ingredient research, or maybe there is some research on the finished product. what should that look like? And what I'm thinking of, Lydia, is I'm thinking of that triangle with the different levels of like the visualizing different, the sort of gold standards of different levels of research, right? So you have
like the pyramid, like anecdotal, word of mouth is down the bottom, and then double-blind, randomized, controlled is the way up the top. Yeah,
right, exactly. So there are different qualities of research that can be done, right? So to your point, anecdotal 500 Sally, Susan, Sarahs, and Michaels online saying this worked for their horse is not as robust as double-blind peer-reviewed study or whatever published in a peer-reviewed journal. And one of the things I think people need to be aware of too is what I call kind of like white papers, where it looks a lot like a research study. And it probably was a research study or a field trial or some kind of clinical trial that was done at a vet hospital or something. And it's written up like a scientific paper, but it's never gone through peer review. It's not actually a scientific paper. And I see quite a lot of those out there associated with products.
Because it looks impressive. The ideal would be if a university decided on their own, unbeknownst to the company, to take their finished product and do research on it with a treatment group and a control group. And it was randomized and double blind, which double masked, I think is what we're supposed to say now. And it had enough horses to be significant and long enough. And there was a washout period and all that. Statistics were run on it. The manuscript was written up and it was submitted to a peer-reviewed scientific journal. And they accepted it, made a few edits, and published it. That would be the ideal. That's really, really hard to do and really, really expensive. So supplement companies are not big pharma. They don't have the kind of big bucks to do that kind of stuff. And then, like we talked about earlier, they're not going to get as much from that quality of research.
Do you have a sense of how much a study like that actually costs to do?
Yeah, that kind of study that I just described is well into the six figures.
Right. So that's a lot of supplement you have to sell.
That's a lot, yeah. You can do some pretty high quality research to show that something does what it's supposed to do, does what it claims to do, works, and can be used safely in horses in much less than that.
So for horse owners, because we're doing a deep dive on research studies, if you could define two things for us, explain what double-blind means, and then also what peer-reviewed means, because we hear that a lot as horse owners. It's been a double-blind study and it's peer-reviewed. What do those mean?
Okay. I'll do the double-blind, and Claire, you do the peer-reviewed. So double-blind means that in a clinical trial is when you're taking something, product X, and you're giving it to horses and seeing if it makes a difference. But by blinding, it means that nobody knows which horses are getting what. So you want to have a placebo. And if this is purple, my treatment, my placebo needs to be purple so that the feeders, the administrators, can't look at it and know. So neither the administrators know which horses are getting what, nor the people doing the testing, whether the testing is, let's say they are looking for gastric ulcers. So my scopers, the people who are using the endoscope, and they're rating, they're grading the severity of the ulcers they see, when they're doing that, they don't know if subject 1, subject 2, subject 3 is in the treatment group or the control group. They don't know.
So they can't bias it, right? They can't bias their responses.
Yep. They can't think in their mind, oh, he's in the treatment group, so I bet his ulcers aren't as severe, and accidentally, unconsciously give it a 2 instead of a 2.5. You know, sometimes you don't intend it. One year we were doing a study and the guy, he wanted to make sure that he and his team did not know which horses got what. They made us code the product and the horse like 3 steps away. So not just like horse 1 through 10 and product A through B, but like horse 1 gets product A and cycle B and lane Q. It was really convoluted. And I lost the spreadsheet.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I'm so fired. Then I shot it, so it's okay.
I was going to say, how did that end?
It ended well.
With some really mad researchers. With some really, really, really tired grad students.
Yeah. The research ended with not showing significance, just trends. And we decided trends weren't enough to go forward with the formula. So we bagged it. I did not get fired. So
should have to formulate something else. Yeah, so peer review is when you write up your research that you've done following scientific, the way, an abstract, your introduction, your materials and methods, your results and your discussion, and you submit that to a journal of your choosing to hopefully get it published. Well, before they'll publish it in the journal, it gets reviewed normally by 2 of your peers who you don't know who they are, right? So I've submitted things for peer review and I've done peer reviewing. So I'll receive a manuscript, nor the journal will contact me and say, somebody has submitted a manuscript in a topic that we feel that you have expertise in, and we would appreciate you reviewing this paper for us. And you then read that paper and critique it, and you make sure that they, have used methods that seem appropriate for the kind of research they're doing. That there's a reason for doing the research in the first place, right? Let's be honest. Like, is this actually even worth doing in the first place? Is it based on sound scientific principles and a good foundation of prior knowledge? And have they used methods that are approved and methods that have generally been used in published research before? So it's an accepted method. There are methods papers that get developed, but yeah.
So I have a huge long list of how to do a research study. Put this together. It's an SOP. And one of the things that supplement manufacturers don't have the time and money to do is validate a test. So when you're choosing an ingredient or a formula to study, you try to pick products and tests that are already out there that you don't need to sort of confirm that that test does what it says it's doing. So here's an example. Calming supplements. Really hard to find a measuring tool. Like what? And how do you challenge a horse? In some ways, stress is kind of the same too. So we were doing a study on one of our products, and I was reading some research I had found, and they had a really great validated test to study if an ingredient would make you calmer and less reactive. The test was, so you have a handler, expendable handler, and the video camera set up and the head researcher in this, and you walk the horse down the outside of the barn. When you get to the corner, there's a person there. We'll call him person B. And they have an umbrella.
I read this paper.
The person handling the horse, there's a cone set up and like a line so you can measure. And plus there's video. And so the guy jumps out and opens up the umbrella, and then you grade it. Like 1, horse didn't react at all, and 2, horse like lifted his head but stayed on the line. 3 was went off the line but didn't go outside like the marked line and cones. 5 was got loose.
So it left the county.
Yeah, right. That's why I had to be an expendable person. And I shared this validated measuring tool for assessing reactivity to this guy that I was doing research with. We were developing the protocol. And I didn't even notice this. It said polka dot umbrella. He went and bought a polka dot umbrella because he thought this is the validated test.
Because reviewer number 2 was going to say it didn't have polka dots. So that is the joke in the research community, is that it gets read by, you tend to get through with one reviewer, and then there's reviewer number 2. And reviewer number 2 tends to be like, wah, wah, wah. And you get your paper back, and it's like reviewer number 2 is just like trumpled all over it, and it's come back. And, so there's things like your figures just stand alone from your stats and all that kind of stuff. So there's all these rules about publishing. And so your peers, it's supposed to be, your friends, you're sharing it with your friends, your peers, who then review it and say, yes, this is a brilliant piece of research, send it straight to publishing. Or, yeah, it's good. Like, we should publish it. But there's a couple of things that need to be, like, I didn't understand the second paragraph in the discussion. Like, that didn't really make any sense. Like, they need to rewrite that, right? So they'll send it back. And so it's a ruthless process, and it takes several months to get something approved for publishing. So that is like the gold standard. Like, if you get something peer reviewed, that is not the same as if you do the same polka dot umbrella experiment that Dr. Gray was explaining. And then as a company, you write it up in a similar kind of layout and then create a technical paper that you then share with your supplement, because nobody else has reviewed that. It's just been written in-house and it hasn't been critiqued by 2 anonymous. I should say the reviewers are anonymous. And so there's a big difference between the two. It's great to have that technical paper, and golly, I'd take it over nothing at all. But it's important to understand that it's not been through the peer review process.
As a horse owner, I have a friend who's a researcher, and she's used the umbrella test in some of her studies. And she was describing it to me.
Polka dot umbrella?
I will have to ask her if it was a polka dot once, and I'm going to have to see if her details were that good. But she was describing it to me, and I had seen the original study, and then she was telling me how she was using it for what she was working on. And all I can think as a horse owner is I'm going to be the one who ends up buying that horse that was traumatized by an umbrella in a research study, and I'm going to have to go down center line at a horse show in the rain. So,
No, quite the opposite. Because what we found was the first time all the horses were like, what? And the second time they're like, whatever, stupid umbrella.
And I just have to give a shout out. If we have any undergraduates or graduate students listening, shout out to you all, because it is a huge amount of work. I mean, the professors who sort of oversee all this research are brilliant, but the work all behind the scenes is being done by undergraduate students and graduate students. And having been one and having had a lot of undergraduates work on my PhD research, they're a godsend. Like this research would not be. A lot of my peers when I was in grad school were like, you're going to have undergraduates like take data for you, like go out at 2 a.m. and take data. And I'm like, yeah, because I couldn't have done mine 7 days in a row with like every 4 hours. I would have been dead, like if I hadn't had people going out and collecting data.
Well, so here's a perfect example of that. One of the things that not every supplement manufacturer does, but we did, was palatability testing. Because it doesn't matter if your supplement is safe and it works and all that, if the horses won't eat it, right? So we always did taste tests. And I found a undergraduate private university that had 150 horses and lots of undergraduate students. And we had a protocol where we used 28 horses. And the protocol involved, they looked at, they spent, before we ever did this, they went through every horse and they gave them a grade as far as pickiness. And every palatability study had to have a certain number of the pickiness grades. So 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. Because it wasn't helpful to me to have the study with all eat anything horses.
Right.
That is not helpful.
Right.
So we used kind of a bell curve on that. But two things, the students were amazingly particular. They followed protocols to the letter. They were amazing. And the other was, they would often come back to the staff vet or me and say, I think we can improve the protocol.
I had the same thing.
Yes, ideas.
Yes, brilliant. It's funny. I remember saying to some undergraduates one day, I don't know how it came up, but they said something. And I turned to this undergraduate and I said, the only difference between you and me is I've had 2 extra years of classes. That's it. Like your good idea is just as good as my good idea. And we were having trouble figuring out how to separate samples in the dark or whatever. And I mean, literally as simple as, well, why don't we mark the what, like some of them with a Sharpie with an X? And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I think of that? It's like, it was really simple, but it saved so much time and meant that we didn't screw up taking the control bags instead of the actual treatment bags. And we could, when they were covered in gunk, we could see the difference between them kind of thing. And it was as simple as putting a huge X with a Sharpie on it, and I was like, genius. Yeah. So no, they had brilliant ideas. They were super and great fun to work with. And what's been really fun is that a number of them did go to grad school. I know at least one who went on to get a PhD, another one who went off to vet school and then went to grad school. So, you like to think that maybe you helped, shape them on their own path, which is really rewarding.
Sure, I take credit for a lot of those.
So palatability is a topic for an entire episode, but just in one word, what's a horse's favorite flavor? Because I think it might surprise people.
There's a research paper that says fenugreek, which has a mapley vanilla smell.
And a lot of them like banana too, don't they?
Banana's number 2. But the study was done in the UK. So it might be because perhaps bananas are fed more regularly in the UK than in the US.
It's a different palate
If
in
they've
English
done this
horses.
in the US, yeah, they might have been different. But fenugreek, the only problem with fenugreek as a palatant is it is very mild. So if you have a strong smelling, fantastic ingredient, fenugreek alone is not going to do it, but it pairs nice with things. So like a cherry fenugreek, is a really good combination. You just don't want to put two things together that, like, you wouldn't want to put a cherry citrus. That's weird.
I have visions of
Or like
horses standing around trying all these different things. Like, oh
No,
God,
not
they
that
put
one.
the citrus with the fenugreek, not the citrus and
Well,
the fenugreek.
Yeah, there's an undernote of anise in this one. So,
Right. Yeah, like drinking wine,
When you're thinking about palatants for horses, you have to think equally in terms of what the horses will eat. When the owner opens that bag and gets that scent, it has to be attractive to them too.
Yeah, and I've definitely had cases where I've recommended things to people and they open the bag and they're like, I can't feed this to my horse. And I'm like, no, I promise he'll eat it. Like, he's not going to care. Like, he doesn't mind that smell, even though you don't like it. So yeah, that's very true. It has to smell good to the owner.
Think what would dog palatants be if owners weren't making the buying decisions?
I know what mine would be.
Now there's a thought.
Who's going to leave that right there?
We'll go talk to my dogs after when I'm cleaning stalls tonight. So I have one more question on this that I want to answer from both of you guys on. And then I do want to ask for some free advice because I have a question I need an answer to. Each one of you, what's your absolute favorite supplement ingredient? Dr. Gray, you're a guest. Guess first.
Well, my answer is the one that the horse needs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, how can I beat that? That's not fair.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I see too many people that want to feed supplements because they're cool or they're new or they're trendy or their friends doing it. Get the horse nutrition right. Get the foundation right. And then if your horse has a unique issue, then solve for that.
Right.
But don't give something because everybody else is doing it or horses need supplements. Maybe they don't.
No, that's very true.
One of the worst things.
Yeah. And I say that to people all the time, especially the one I always talk about is like joint supplements. And I think you do know that you need manganese for chondroitin sulfate formation and copper for collagen formation. And like, if your diet is not meeting minimum requirements in copper and manganese, it's foolish to be spending $3 a day on a joint supplement. And I think people are like, they make their own like collagen and chondroitin sulfate. Like, yes, these are things the horse makes himself. So help him make them himself by giving him the diet he needs to function properly and do all those things properly. And if you're doing that and then you still need, that joint supplement or whatever, then put that joint supplement in there. But that's a really good point. You have to start off with that. They are supplements. They are the little tiny sprinkling on the end of the, on the dust on the top, and I see a lot of buckets where there's an awful lot of dust and not a lot of anything else, so.
When I get asked that question from customers, from people, horse owners, and I find out that I always start with, what does your horse do? How old is he? And what you're feeding? And how's the I cover the whole management and diet first, and then we get to supplements. And I might find out that, the horse is on hay from last year, and I give him a handful of pellets because he's an airfer and he's an easy keeper. While that horse is deficient,
right,
in his vitamins, he's not getting his vitamins A and E for sure, and there's probably some trace minerals and maybe some macro minerals. But until you fill those holes,
right,
yeah. So I always start with, you got to feed the horse what the horse needs every day, and not just a minimum.
Right.
Because we don't want our horses just to be alive.
Right.
We ask them to do things for us. Win this class, get a 70%. I want a 17 seconds on the barrel race, whatever it is. So we don't just do minimums, but any supplement discussion that I have always starts with, what is your horse eating and how much? And you'd be amazed at how many people go, a scoop, or they give you some unit,
right,
that does not tell you the answer.
Oh, yes, we have that.
Weigh the ration and check out our basics episodes. We'll put those in the show notes.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah, we definitely cover that.
So free advice. So for years, Claire has answered my questions and she's never sent me an invoice, even though she probably should have at some point. So I have my question for my free advice today. And with Dr. Gray here too, I think this is one that you'll both be able to help me with. So I've been caring for a filly. She's 2 now. She was rescued last fall. Her body score when she was handed over she was between a 2.5. The vet put her. When she came to my place, I very carefully followed the UC Davis refeeding protocol. We'll talk about that in a future episode because it's really important. If you have a starved horse, you have to feed it correctly or they can very literally die on you, even though you're trying to save them. She has done well. She's on a normal diet. Her body score is healthy now. She's bright, she's shiny, she's happy, she's sweet. She's a lovely, lovely horse. But I've noticed that her top line is just not where I would expect a top line to be on a 2-year-old. What could be going on and what could I do to help her out with her top line development?
No, now does Claire go first on this time?
We can let Claire take the lead.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think she's probably still growing, right? So there's probably still some, up and down going on and putting calories into bone growth and growing and not into maintaining muscle mass. My guess is she's probably considerably bigger than she was before.
She's grown a lot. It's almost like she had all this pent up growth. And then once we got her nutrition right, slowly, we did it, slowly at first, following the protocol. But then once she had her nutrition, she was like a weed, Yeah,
it's actually called compensatory growth or compensatory growth, depending on where you're
what
from.
side of the pond you're on.
Yeah, I chuckle. I'm chuckling because it reminds. I took a class when I was in college called growth, and it was taught by somebody, and he teased me notoriously about having a different accent. So that particular class, and compensatory and compensatory was one word he was always picking on. But that's a thing. They will exponentially grow when you do get them back on a good diet, and suddenly they catch up pretty quickly. So that could be part of what's going on, especially if her ration perhaps hasn't quite kept up now with her new size. And I think it's, you did such a good job of keeping her, doing it right and being slow, and the tortoise always wins the race, right? It's better to do little, not enough, and do it slowly with them. I'm just wondering whether perhaps she needs a little bit more than you're giving her now. And maybe that mindset of not giving too much or whatever is subconsciously still in the back of your mind a little bit.
So it's time to take the husband's coffee scale back out and reweigh her.
And weigh your hay too. I mean, you free feed though, right?
She gets as much hay as she wants, yeah. But she's not an eager eater. She's considering,
What's your hay quality like currently? Like, do you have a newer batch of hay? Because obviously young horses.
It is a newer batch of hay. Do not ask me to give you the specifics of a hay analysis right now, Claire.
No, but if you look at it, does it look different? Like, is it stemmier? Does it look as nutritionally, good as the last batch?
It's more mature.
Well, okay. Okay,
and
so
by mature,
perhaps what's going on.
For the other horse owners out there, by mature, I mean that there's more seed head on it. The grass was allowed to grow a little bit longer, and so there are more seed heads than maybe the last batch.
Okay. So I'm thinking you may have a protein quality issue, and I know that you're feeding a ration balancer that's like 30% protein at the right amount because you're really good about making sure you do that. But here's what I'm thinking, and it's something we don't think about. So when you test a hay, and you send it to the lab and they analyze it, they're going to grind it all up and put a bunch of reagents and chemicals with it. And they're going to figure out how much nitrogen is in that. And they're going to multiply that by 6.25% and say that's your protein, right? It's a very crude calculation, which is why we call it crude protein. It is like an estimate of an estimate. It's very crude. So we see that if you had a hay analysis, let's say it had a crude protein of 12%. That's very reasonable. That would be a nice hay. But when your hay is super stemmy and mature, that protein is inside of the cells, and you've got a lot of structural stemmy material surrounding that. And in order to access that, it's going to require microbial fermentation. Well, your microbial fermentation happens in the hindgut, right, where all the bugs are, and your site of protein absorption is the small intestine, which precedes that, is before that. So your you'd maybe not actually able to utilize all of that 12% protein, and we're making up that it's 12%, right? That protein may not all be available to her. So if you were previously feeding her a less stemmy, less mature, slightly higher quality grass, it might have even had the same protein content as the one you have now. More of that protein might have been available to her. So you may have inadvertently actually reduced her protein intake so that she's actually not getting enough protein and maybe not able to maintain her top line as well. So it could be multiple different things going on. But it might be for her, and it's hard if you're managing them in a herd. So sometimes that makes it hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, she comes in and has some time by herself. They all come in and eat their supplements and stuff separate from
Is
each other.
Is she getting any alfalfa?
She's not currently getting any alfalfa.
You could do a little bit of alfalfa and just see, even just 2, 3, 4 pounds. I'm not trying to go crazy with it, but just as a way to get a little, still from a forage base, because I do love maximizing forage intake. But something that's going to have that little higher protein, a slightly better protein quality, and see if that has anything.
Okay, we can definitely.
But I would probably start there. And that would help you with your potentially calorie intake if you are, in fact, shorting her on calories because you didn't realize she grew quite as much as she had and hadn't adjusted correctly.
Yeah, bigger scoop for sure. And some alfalfa.
Which you're going to weigh.
Which I'm going to weigh. I'm going to weigh. I promise I will weigh. Looks like you have some thoughts.
Wow, my turn. Well, that was a really comprehensive answer. So, I would just like to say, and thanks for listening. But I
couldn't beat you on your favorite supplement one, right?
We're talking about compensatory, and I can't even pronounce the other way you said it.
Compensatory.
Anyway, it all comes down to who you learned from. So my undergraduate advisor, I don't know who he learned from, but he didn't pronounce it protein. He pronounced it protein.
Oh, golly.
Yeah, so I really screwed up. But anyway, that's what we're talking about is protein. I also wanted to add, there's the nutrition aspect of it. Speaking as a veterinarian, is there anything else going on in her world? This is a question you ask yourself and maybe talk to your vet that could be affecting how much she is using protein, because your ability to build muscle depends on 2 things, right? Well, it depends on lots of things, but the 2 things that I mean are the quality and quantity of the protein coming in, and then how much of the amino acids you're using. Are you using them for something else? Like we know healing and recovery take a lot more amino acids than if you're just maintaining. I would think hard, is there anything going on where she might be using up amino acids that are coming in at a faster rate than normal, burning through them, I think it's important in any protein discussion to talk about lysine, the first limiting amino acid, because you might have all of the other essential amino acids, but if you don't have enough lysine, you can't build muscle because it's the first thing. And I've been looking on my desk, how can I demonstrate this? Someone did it with me. I've done it with like necklaces, like those candy necklaces with the colors, and also with like stackable Lego blocks. But they're like, build a tower of 10 blocks and every 5th block has to be yellow. And then they just go, and here's your blocks. So I'm like, la, 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 yellow, red, 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 yellow, red, red, red. And then I'm out of yellow. Well, I can't build the tower anymore because I ran out of yellow lysine. So there's that. And then so it's lysine and then probably threonine and then probably methionine. So you've got a couple of ways to add protein to your horse's diet. I love alfalfa. I love alfalfa for the senior horses too, because it's like ice cream. They tend to eat it more readily, and then they can add some weight and stop the muscle atrophy that they get with age. But if you want to think of a supplement, there are supplements that are in the muscle building category that have lysine, threonine, and methionine. And so that's what I would look for. But the other way to approach it is, you said you're using a ration balancer?
Yes.
Okay. I tend to use ration balancers for the horses that I need to really watch their calories, and they don't need commercial grain, sweet feeds, and what you think of as fortified grain or concentrates, because they just need the nutrition, the vitamins, minerals, and protein, but they don't need the calories. In your case, maybe you need to gradually switch to an actual fortified grain or concentrate. I'd love to hear what Claire thinks of this idea. because she maybe needs calories along with the nutrients. In a ration balancer, I don't know what size she is, but you may be feeding a pound a day, pound and a half, 2 pounds. Am I right?
1.1 pounds.
Exactly.
If my husband's coffee scale is correct, which it's very accurate.
I bet it sounds like it. When you're feeding a fortified grain or a concentrate, you're going to be feeding more like 5 pounds, 7 pounds, whatever, course divided. It may be just that she needs a different concentrate than the ration balancer, especially as a 2-year-old, you know?
Yeah, and I think if you're only feeding 1.1 pounds of ration balancer and she's now, I think you mentioned like 16.1, yeah, she could probably have more than that of that ration balancer too. So just kind of reevaluate how much she actually weighs if you stay with a ration balancer. But I agree. I mean, some calories from somewhere else, especially if your hay qualities drop. Certainly, I put young horses in the category of needing better quality hay, which, you have a challenge. So I know you have Cushing's senior horse, and some metabolic types. And so, you're managing them as a herd, which has, this is the real life problems people face, right?
I know. And now I'm just feeling so embarrassed that I just said 1.1 and I realize she is 16.1 hands now, and she probably is closer to above 1,200 pounds, and she probably could be getting close to 2 pounds, right, of a ration balancer. And I don't know how that even happened.
But these are the things that happen all the time. This is real life, right? And this is why it's, so valuable to have this conversation.
And that's why it's important to weigh both the horse and weigh the product. Yeah.
And the fact that you thought you noticed that she was losing her top line, and your mind said, hello, hang on, what's this going on? And you're actively thinking about something's changed. What is it? And you're trying to figure it out. That's the most important thing. And so much of what you're doing is right in that you're managing her as a herd animal in a herd, which is so important for young horses. You're having to weigh that against the challenge of having older, more mature metabolic types that, free feed, which is so good for digestive health. But that means if you're going to free feed, oftentimes it means you need a lower nutritional value forage, which then is not so ideal for a 2-year-old. So you're trying to balance.
Welcome to my life.
Welcome to the life of lots and lots of horse owners, right? I mean, these are the challenges. So, you just have to start getting creative of, this is your hay and it's probably the best hay for your herd situation. So how can you mentioned you do bring her in, for supplements and things. So could you give her some alfalfa then that the others don't get? Or could she maybe get some calories from a growth feed to make up for the, lower availability of nutrition in this hay that for a young growing horse would be better if it was slightly higher value? And so, these are the adaptations, we have to make. And this is the realities of managing and owning horses, especially in a group.
Well, thank you both.
But really just talking it through.
Yeah.
Right.
Was so helpful.
Because I can change the amount she gets starting today. I can increase that, and I can go get some alfalfa tomorrow, and we can start working towards that.
One of the things that I coach people with is keeping a journal.
Yeah.
And I don't care how you do it, if it's on paper or digital, it's a calendar or whatever, but keep track of your horse's body condition score and weight. Use the same weight tape. It doesn't have to be accurate,
right?
As far as absolute, the number 1035, 1201, it just has to be the same tautness, right? The same tape and the same person doing it in the same way. You're looking for the trend. So if you take her weight on July 1st, and then you take it again September 1st, and it's 150 pounds different. Ding, ding, ding. And there we have a problem.
It's that relative weight gain and loss, not the absolute. Exactly. She weighs this amount. Yeah, it's the weight takes. And we're all guilty of when you see them every day, especially the creeping up weight, perhaps not noticing that. So yeah, for sure. So it's great that you noticed, and that we had this conversation, and you've got some things to try. It'll be interesting. You'll have to let us know how it goes.
Well, thank you for the free advice to both of you. And thank you, Dr. Gray, for joining us. It's really been fun to have you as part of our conversation.
So much more to talk about. I know.
That's like 3-4 more hours.
I know. For listeners, if you'd like to be part of our conversations, please send suggestions for future topics and equine nutrition questions to info@scoopandscale.com, and is spelled out. You can find Claire at clarityequine.com.
And please make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and tell your friends and share on social media and all the things.
For the Scoop and Scale podcast, I'm Michelle Anderson.
And I'm Dr. Claire Tunis.
Thanks for riding along with us.